right, everybody. Welcome back to the Sad Dad Games podcast. And welcome back to another episode of Eric's Indie Corner. Hooray!
Woo!
Love Eric's Indie Corner. So Eric's Indie Corner, for those of you who don't know, is a series where we take a little bit of break from our regular content, and I use it as a very selfish platform to talk about the indie games that I love. And so this one is a little bit unique because up until now, I've been talking about older indie games that I might have played in the past, but this is actually a brand spanking new indie game that just came out a few days ago, depending on when exactly this airs. And I played through it really fast, really enjoyed it, and I'm just super excited to talk about it with you guys. So today I am your host, Eric, and joining me,
I'm Luke.
There's Luke, and
I'm Tucker.
There it is. All right, so we're super excited. Today, the game that we're going to be talking about is Europa. This is one that kind of caught my eye a few months ago. I saw it in a Nintendo Direct presentation, and I was like, ooh, I think I got to try that out when it comes out. Europa, it's a 3D kind of a cozy, mellow platformer, and it's developed by a studio called Nova Dust Entertainment. And like I said, the release date was very recently. It came out on October 11th, 2024. So brand spanking new. And today I'm going to break down the kind of what we're going to be talking about in a few sections. First, we're going to take a minute to talk about story. Then we're going to take a minute to talk about the gameplay, then the visuals and sound, and then a few extra bullet points of why I really enjoyed this game. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about story. So the story for Europa is all about one of the moons of Jupiter, Europa. Surprise. And
What?
I know, crazy. Who would have thought?
This is also a place in Destiny. That's where I'm most familiar with it.
It is. Tucker and I spent many hours on Europa in Destiny.
It is. I forgot about that. It
many,
is also
many hours.
Too many hours.
Yeah. So this is an offshoot of the Destiny series. No, it's not. It's a completely different thing. But yeah, so when we were all college roommates, Luke and Tucker played quite a bit of Destiny, and every once in a while they would slum it with me and let me play too. And they'd spend most of the time reviving me and helping me get loot because I'm not very good at Destiny. And I never have been.
It was like playing with a toddler.
It was like playing with a toddler.
We basically had to hold Eric's hand, and when he would throw the controller, we'd have to give him a popsicle to calm him down.
Yeah. Nothing calms me down like a popsicle. I am playing Destiny. You just get too frustrated, but then, a nice little popsicle, he just calms you right down, and you're
ready to play some more.
Yeah, and then you're ready for round
again.
2. Yeah. I use a similar strategy with my children. Shush, here's a popsicle. Yeah. So not at all related to Destiny, but you explore the moon of Europa. And so you play as Z, a small boy who resembles some kind of like robot or android. So you're playing as like a little android named Z with a jetpack. And you are exploring a terraformed Europa that has been turned into some kind of paradise for humans. So it's beautiful, lush green landscapes and rolling hills and rivers and lakes and all sorts of really cool stuff like that. And you start your journey, not exactly understanding why you're starting this journey, but as you progress, the story unfolds a little bit more and more. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. It started off as a mystery. You just start the game and you start playing and you're not exactly sure what exactly your objective is or what you're working towards, but you know that you need to move forward and work towards something. And then as the game moves forward and as you play a little bit more, the story kind of unfolds in front of you. And the way that they do that isn't super revolutionary, but was implemented in a way that I really enjoyed and helped me engage with the story. Is you find a lot of journal entries from Z's father, and these journal entries help to flesh out the world and help you understand what's going on Europa, why Z is here, what he's journeying towards. And it's not an incredibly complex story, but an incredibly enjoyable story that I had a great time with for pretty much the whole runtime.
I haven't finished the game like Eric has. Eric has already finished it.
Yep.
But I was reading some reviews and people talking about it. And one specific thing a lot of people mentioned about the story was it took them a minute to get rolling with it. It took a minute to get into it. As you were explaining, Eric, it seems like the story has a really good payoff. But at first you're dropped on Europa and you're not entirely sure what the objective is initially. Do I get that right? Like it really picks up, but maybe the first couple minutes, it's not apparent. Like it's not a driving game.
Yeah. So really when you start the game, kind of a driving factor is just this sort of like, it's very serene and there are a lot of good visual elements pushing you forward. But the story, all you really know is that you're Z and you're on Europa and something is happening. But as you go step by step, you get these journal entries and there's some environmental storytelling and you can put the pieces together of what's been going on and what you're trying to do. And something that I really appreciated about this is that it wasn't like a really challenging or complex narrative, but it felt very warm and just like nice. I was like, yeah, I liked that. But it didn't really completely blow me away and be like, whoa, I can't believe that just happened. But it was like, that was a really enjoyable, it's like a good, like when you have like a really good snack and it just hits the spot, and you're like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. I really liked that. It's like that.
It's a popsicle.
It's a popsicle. It's a popsicle of a game.
Eric, would you say the story structure is pretty similar to how Hollow Knight develops, where you're just thrown into this world and as you go through it, you're uncovering more and more, or is it a little bit more polished and linear?
I wouldn't say that it's more polished because I think Hollow Knight's story is damn near perfect. Like it is, but Hollow Knight's story is very much in the background. You really have to put the pieces together yourself. Europa is a lot more direct than Hollow Knight, but it does build as you go along like Hollow Knight does. But I think Hollow Knight is different in story because while you're playing that game, if you aren't trying to, you'll never put the pieces together. It'll just be like, that was a game and I liked it, but I don't know what was going on. Like, and Europa, it's pretty hard to not know what's going on by the end because it lays it out for you. The story is pretty direct in that way, but it does develop as you go along. Yeah, so story, really enjoyable. Definitely a good key point of that. So we're going to move on a little bit to gameplay now. Again, similar to the story, the gameplay isn't super complex, but it is interesting enough to keep you engaged and move you through the story. It's a 3D platformer with an emphasis on flight and flow. So Z has like a little jetpack on his back that you can hold down the button and use to jump, like with a high jump. And then you can hover and float, not hover, you can like glide. So it gives you a great ability to cover long distances in a horizontal way. But then you can also fly straight upwards with your jetpack with a certain upgradable meter. So you can find collectibles and upgrade your ability to fly a little bit higher. So it gives you this kind of control over being up and down, and it's less jumping and more kind of floating around and flying. But the jetpack is really like, it took a little bit of getting used to at first. I was like, I don't know if I really enjoy this control scheme. And then once it sort of kind of clicks with you and you understand that the platforming is there to serve the story and to serve the visuals and the music, it becomes more agreeable. It's not like it wasn't as much of a stumbling block as I thought it would, because I played the demo and I was like, I don't know if I'm really into this platforming. And then once I started playing the whole game and I was understanding the story and understanding Z's place and all of it, I enjoyed the platforming a lot more.
I was curious about the jetpack mechanic because it initially reminded me of Mario Sunshine, where you have the water guns and you're not really able to like really fly with them, but you can glide and get over some vertical obstacles for periods of time. Is it similar in that, or is it doesn't look like it's really Boba Fett's jetpack where you're just absolutely going to cruise around the level with it?
Yeah, I'd say that's a good point of comparison with a couple of caveats. It's a lot more floaty. Like I feel like Mario's platforming controls are really tight and precise, and Europa's controls are more deliberately floaty. It doesn't feel like, oh, these like are gummy and gross. They're bad controls. You can tell that the developers wanted the game to feel floaty and light. It's not as like pin sharp as Mario's controls, but it also is a lot more vertical. Like with the little jet things with Mario, you can fly up a little bit, but this one you can fly up really pretty high and then glide around. And there's these floating circles that you like orbs that if you fly through them, it'll refill your jetpack meter and then you can keep going. And so if you can bounce between these circles, it gets you in this nice state of flow where you're just like, you can just sort of kind of glide through the game and take in the sights. And it gets a nice flow state that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I haven't played the game. I've watched a few demos and a playthrough, but it really reminded me a little bit of A Short Hike, which is another indie game I played
it's a good
recently.
comparison.
On just the floatiness and lightheartedness, and especially the score behind it was very light. That it really felt like Breath of the Wild. It's just this like calming, let me just cruise around. explore this land.
Let me just
So I'm
build
really
some
excited to get
crazy
it.
gadgets.
Yeah.
It's like if Breath of the Wild was if you had a jetpack and there were no enemies, basically.
I built a jetpack in Breath of the Wild.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears
Tears of the
maybe, I
Kingdom,
guess,
not Breath
yeah.
of the Wild.
Yeah.
I built my jetpack in Tears of the Kingdom. And
Yeah.
I basically jetpacked everywhere.
I like the comparison to a short hike. It does have some, not so much gameplay similarities, but some like general vibes where it's like a nice, mellow, meditative experience. And for those of you listening right now, Short Hike is another one that I have an indie script all ready to go. And we're going to record that one and release it fairly soon because that is another really excellent indie game. So look out for that one.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, it's a good one. So yeah, Europa is the gameplay is really meditative. It's a nice flow state. Really, the stakes are all weighed on the story and not on the gameplay. You don't have a health bar. There are some enemies, but they can't kill you or anything. They can stun you and then it makes you move a little bit slower for a little while. So they're really more of an inconvenience than they are any kind of real challenging element. That is one thing that I felt like maybe could have been fine-tuned a little more, is I felt like the enemies were more just like than an interesting gameplay wrinkle.
That's what I was going to ask about. I love platforming games, and I tend to lean towards the platforming games that are a little bit more punishing, not necessarily
Me
in a
too.
masochistic way, but I do like the challenge of a good platform. And if the enemies are just an obstacle, like there's no game over, you don't run out of life, does it feel like the stakes are high with the enemies, or
No. Yeah.
they're just there?
It's not a difficult game.
Okay.
There are basically no stakes on the gameplay. It's hard to fail. Like if you just do what you're doing, sooner or later, you'll get to the end. I feel like that was a really deliberate choice from the developers. They had this story they wanted to tell. They had this gameplay kind of style that they wanted to try out. And really another point that we're going to hit on in a minute is they had a visual and audio experience that they wanted to convey, because the visuals and audio of this game are, particularly the visuals, are a huge part of what makes Europa special. So it's not so much about super tight, difficult platforming as it is about an experience. Yeah.
That's my kind of platformer. I am not one to play punishing platformers like Luke. I love just a nice chill vibe platformer, which I think is why I like the Short Hike. While this game really speaks to me, watching it, I'm like, man, I think I could really get into this type of platform.
If I don't need to throw my controller at the wall every 20 seconds, is it even a platformer anymore?
Listen,
Barely.
I have enough anxiety and stress in my life. I don't need it from my video game.
Tucker is as bad at platformers as I am at Destiny. So that's one area
That is
where I
very
can.
true.
That's one
pretty
area
bad.
where I can
really
lord
bad.
my skills over him and be like, oh yeah, have a Hollow Knight nerd. Yeah.
Wow, nerd.
Yeah.
Whenever we play the Ultimate Chicken Force, I am definitely the bottom of the, I'm lucky if I get some point.
Yeah. Whenever we play and Tucker wins, we all just sit there flabbergasted. Like, did that really, what just happened?
Myself included.
Yeah. Tucker's like, did I win?
It's by accident.
Did something glitch? Yeah. So Europa, nice meditative experience. Gameplay is not super challenging, but I will say that it was engaging enough to not be tertiary and be like just as a method to serve the story. It was enough to keep me wanting to play the game. Enough so that I actually am planning a second playthrough, because there are 40 collectibles, little crystals that you can get throughout the game, and I didn't get all of them. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to play it again, get all the crystals. So we're going to move on now to visuals and sound. And oh man, this is where the game really sells it. And I will say, so the game is available on Switch and Windows right now. I'm not sure what the future holds for other platforms, but I very much like to play my indie games on my Switch because I just love playing in handheld. I love having that versatility. So I bought this one on Switch, knowing that it would be a little bit of a visual downgrade, and was a little kind of worried that might impact this experience. And it is a little bit fuzzier on Switch. The resolution's not quite as high, but I was still very engaged in the visuals, engrossed in the visuals, and very happy with the visual experience that Europa was able to deliver on the Switch.
It really reminds me of almost like you take Link's Awakening, like avatars, and you throw them in the Breath of the Wild world. That similar graphics tier. I'm not really sure if that's the graphic art style, where it's not necessarily pixelated and cartoonish, but it's also not realistic. It's not like they're running Unreal.
Don't worry, I've got all the vocabulary you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, when I play The Last of Us on my PC, for example, on that gaming rig, I need tons of computing power and really high GPU to make sure that the visuals, because the visuals in that game are so stunning and so realistic, to make sure that they all really shine. But there's something about the idea, like playing this game on Switch, for example, there's something about the tactile and personal element of the Switch, that handheld element of it, that I feel like probably lends itself really well to Europa, that I would probably enjoy playing this more on my Switch than I would on my PC gaming rig.
Yeah, I can never sing the Switch's praises enough for being an indie machine. I will almost always, like, if indies are available on any platform, I'm like, is it on Switch? Because that's where I want to play it. And yeah, so I really enjoyed the visual experience on Switch. I thought that it exceeded my expectations. I was pleasantly surprised. I was expecting a bit more of a downgrade than there actually was. The visual style that Tucker so artfully articulated just a minute ago
So artfully.
so artfully is very reminiscent of like a Studio Ghibli style film, for those of you familiar with that animation studio, where they use very strong, very saturated color palettes and backgrounds and a painterly art style. And then they have very animated and cell shaded, brightly colored characters on top of that. And so the visuals are really, really akin to that kind of style. They've got these cartoonish shaded characters with a beautiful painterly background. And like I said, Europa has been a beautifully terraformed planet to be a paradise for people. And there's these beautiful hills and these nice skyboxes and wonderful clouds. And they've got these rolling green hills and beautiful mountains. And it really is a very, very nice game to look at. I love when I'm playing a game and I can just sit there and be like, and I just take a step back and I'm like, man, that looks great. I love that. Just this really beautiful art style. And I think that's one of the big selling points for this game, is that it's visually very, very nice to look at and to play and experience. Not just to sing the praises of the visuals, which are excellent, but the audio design in this game is top notch as well. The music is mostly very understated, but it always punctuates the moment and enhances the feelings of wonder and serenity. So the music is probably not going to work its way into your ears and get stuck in your head, but it was very effective in the moments that it served, and really did a good job at complementing the different story beats and the different emotional moments. So I really enjoyed the music. And I wonder, I know that you haven't played the game a ton yet, Luke, but did you have any thoughts about the music? I feel like we always ask this every time we record anything. We're like, Luke, what about the music?
What about the music in this? Yeah. I was trying to do some research on how they put the music together for this, because I haven't played any other games by this studio. So I'm not super familiar with like the team and how they've put stuff together in the past. Europa's my introduction to this studio. Have you played other games by this studio?
So my understanding is they're a pretty new studio. This is a good segue into my fun fact before you get to your musical points. My fun fact for Europa is that it was the passion project of artist, and I am so sorry for all of these people. I'm terrible at name pronunciations, so I'm probably going to get it wrong. If you're watching this video or listening to it anywhere, comment and tell me how to do it right, and I will send you a formal apology and a fruit basket. Except for that,
it's just going to be
part.
Shan commenting on
it'll
this.
It'll be Shan coming in and be like, it's actually this
pronunciations.
Yeah. So it was the passion project of artist Helder Pinto, and developed alongside Pathernick Bryan for programming, and then Brian Horn was in charge of narrative and cinematics. And game development on this began about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was mostly developed in their free time. So my understanding is that this is their first game. So this is their first game under this studio. They did it mostly in their free time, and I think that Helder Pinto works for other larger studios kind of more full time. And so I thought that was very cool that they had a passion project that they wanted to realize and took some of their free time to make that happen. So that was a long way of saying, I think this is their first game.
I think there's a lot to like, and there's a lot that's encouraging about it. Even if you just watch the trailer and get tidbits of the music for the game, like it has that fantasy element in it. It's got some oboe and some strings and some nice pads and patches underneath it. They give it a very, I hate comparing it too much to Breath of the Wild because it's a very different game, but it does have a Breath of the Wild soundscape right off the bat. It puts you in a mood. It definitely has a Zen vibe to it. It's not a game like, I don't hear like boss music with a lot of drums and heavy metal clanking. It definitely feels like the music has been designed to put you in a Zen, to put you in a mood. It's very chill. It's very relaxing. It's got a lot of pads under it, not a lot of percussive elements. which sound really satisfying, right? Like it's the kind of thing I could listen to in the background and it wouldn't distract me too much, but it would just chill me out.
It's got chill vibes.
It's got
Chill
very chill
vibes.
vibes. Yeah.
I think that's very well put, is it's not really in your face. It's understated, but it flows really well and it really sits in the background. It's one of those things where you might not appreciate it while it's happening, but if it wasn't there, the game would not have nearly the level of importance and resonance in those moments. So
Yeah. And the music is very polished. Like I said, I haven't played the
yeah.
whole game. I've just played the demo. And the music in it is very, very. Have you seen the YouTube video, right? Where it's Jurassic Park, but then they like put a terrible harmonica on top of it. And you realize that Jurassic Park was maybe 90% John Williams music and the other 10% was Steven Spielberg and Sam Neill.
Isn't that true of all
That's
projects that John?
I think that is, but I'm also like a sound and music person, so I noticed that. But I do think this has that kind of vibe. Like if the music weren't as polished and smooth and caressing as this is, it might otherwise draw my attention, maybe not in a good way, or it might get in the way of my gameplay because I'd be listening too overtly to it. Yeah. But the fact that it can just be there and it can set the mood and I don't overtly notice it, I think is a really effective way to use music in a video game. Unless it's going to be the gameplay element, I can appreciate when the soundtrack is there, but it doesn't have to draw my attention unnecessarily to it. It supports the action without being the action.
Yep. Very well said. We're talking about sound design. I wanted to also give a special shout out to the narrator of the game. There is, as far as I can tell, really only one voice actor in the game, except for the person who does the grunts and the running and jumping noises of the main character. But besides that, there's really just the one voice actor. When you find these diary entries from Z's dad, they are all voice acted and they are great. They're so good. I should have looked up the person who did the voice acting before recording this episode because he deserves every credit, but really, really very goodly expert good times voice act things. No, but he does a really wonderful job, really sells the moments and has this kind of cadence to his voice, a really nice richness to his voice, like that nice warm father figure talking to you.
I could listen to him read the dictionary.
Yeah, it's great.
Is just smooth, nice, comforting. It's like a word hug.
It's like a word hug. That's exactly what it is, Tucker. I got nothing else to say.
A word hug.
Yeah.
Okay, so according to IMDb, Earl Fisher voices the narrator.
Fisher. Thank you, Luke. Earl Fisher, you're fantastic. Please narrate my life.
Why are all good narrators and voice actors have Earl in their name?
Oh, James Earl Jones.
You got James
Earl Jones.
Rest in
R.I.P.
peace. James Earl Jones's voice is definitely a word hug. Like that's definitely like the epitome of the word hug.
Yep.
Sure, a shout out.
Earl Fisher is wonderful. He did a lot of the heavy lifting in getting me invested in this story. Yeah. And so before we close things out, does anyone else have any closing thoughts about the game before we go?
I'm really excited to play it. I'm currently playing through Silent Hill 2 as we're recording this, which is,
so it's like the same
I think, the opposite side of the spectrum of chillness, where I've never felt so tense in a game. So I'm really excited to play this game to balance myself out with being extremely stressed and terrified the whole time to let's chill and be able to sleep.
Silent Hill's totally the kind of game you want to play with a baby in your arms, right? With a controller like this.
Exactly.
So I was playing Phasmophobia last night with my brothers and my two nephews. My brother hooked on his headset and a speaker so that they could listen to us playing, but we could also talk with my brother. And after we were playing, there was this part in Phasmophobia where we're exploring an insane asylum and there's a morgue in there. And he was texting me after and he said, so my daughter asked me, she's like, is that what they're going to do to me when I die? Are they going to put me in a metal box? And he said, I realized I shouldn't let my daughter watch me play this game. No. But I feel like this is probably a really safe game to play with kids, like
100%.
Like little kids. There's not going to be anything super suspenseful. You don't die in the game. It's probably a safer narrative type game that you can enjoy for all age levels.
Yep, 100%. Yep. My closing thoughts on Europa is that it is a wonderful game that I really, really enjoyed. It might not catch the world on fire. It likely won't win Game of the Year, but it is a meaningful piece of gaming art that is well worth your time and money. I just love when developers get to create something that they're passionate about So please buy the game. Please support it. I think it deserves, the world needs more passionate game developers making things that they care about. And I just can't say enough things. I think that the music might not set the world on fire, but it accents the moments perfectly. The story might not be breaking any new ground, but the story it's telling is full of emotion and intrigue that kept me consistently engaged and occupied until the credits rolled. And I just think that it's a great game that deserves your time and money. So check it out. I really, really enjoyed it. It's not a super long game. It takes about 3 or 4 hours to play. You can buy it on Windows and Nintendo Switch, and it's only $14.99. So a bargain. Not too shabby at all. All right.
Yeah, support small studios.
Support small studios.
get
Give them your
EA.
money. They deserve it. Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Eric's Indie Corner. I had a great time talking about some of my favorite games today. Remember, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss any of our new episodes. Episodes of our regular series drop every Monday, and new episodes of Eric's Indie Corner drop every Thursday. So if you're listening on YouTube, remember to give this video a thumbs up. Hang out with us in the comments. Let us know what you like. And thanks all for listening. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us. We can't wait to talk again. So bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye. Namaste.
All right. And on that note, we'll end it. Beep, bloop, bloop. Outro. Bleep-a-doof, bleep-a-deep, bloop-a-dee-blow.